What should people understand about the sinking of the Moskva? How significant is it?
Yeah, well, good evening, Evan. Let's look at it quickly from a technical perspective, and then we'll look at it from the perspective of the implications. First of all, as you described, we have a Ukrainian-built missile system, which is relatively modern and extremely capable. I understand the United States have indicated that there's no question in their minds that there was a missile attack, and the missile probably fired, well, at least two. We know there were two hits, probably more than that were fired, and it basically was able to penetrate the fairly robust air defense capabilities of the Moskva, which points to a couple of problems. First of all, either the equipment was not operating the way it should have, or the crew was not trained or ready to the level that they should have been. And then we have the secondary issue, which is respect to the fact that missiles of that type are not designed to sink ships. They're designed to inflict damage, typically explosions and fires. And so something then contributed to the sinking of the ship, which means that the crew were not properly prepared or were completely overwhelmed by the extent of the damage and ultimately lost the ship. What that means strategically is really all about the signaling here. It's important to Ukraine because of the very recent history of that particular vessel. It is iconic in terms of being the flagship, as you described. And from a Russian perspective, this points to yet another significant public embarrassment with respect to the relative incompetence, is the only way to describe it, of their armed forces and how they're getting defeated by asymmetric capabilities, be it handheld anti-tank weapons in the streets of Kyiv or, as we witnessed last week, this missile attack on the warship.
You know, I just want, Russia's obviously, spinning this, that it blew up by itself, but they've escalated their attacks because obviously Putin is deeply humiliated by the sinking of this. You know, I know you're the former vice chief of the defense staff, but from a naval point of view, how significant a loss is this to the Russian Navy and their capabilities?
Well, I think tactically and operationally, it's not going to really affect them. They have about 30 ships in the Black Sea at the moment. The Turks have closed access, so they can't reinforce, but there's enough ships to do what they were doing, which was really acting as a bit of a decoy, harassing and threatening an amphibious attack in the vicinity of Odessa. So they can continue to do that. They can transfer many of the capabilities that were in Moskva to other ships. Sure, it'll impact them, but not in a huge way. As I said, I think the impacts are much greater than that. And I think that this points to, as I said a minute ago, another in a series of really glaring indications of errors on the part of the Russians, where in many respects they're playing right into the hands of the Ukrainians. I think this will push them farther offshore, but I'm not sure that it was really a significant threat. It's taken a number of their long-range missiles out of service, but I think the overall impact will be relatively minimal beyond the public relations, morale, and strategic impacts that we just discussed.
Certainly experts like you are starting to reassess Russian training, Russian capability, and Russian strategy in this as they take these massive losses. Retired Vice-Admiral Mark Norman, your perspective on this major moment, but again, big escalation in Ukraine. Thank you, sir. Let's continue our conversations.
Thanks a lot, Evan.